Well, a couple of thoughts I've been thinking about since doing a couple of marathons and just all sorts of stuff. We've been home now for about 10 weeks or so, 10 weeks or so since we got back from Japan, and I've been thinking about a lot of things. Obviously, where you wake up every day and you kind of know what you need to do. You kind of have your routine. We spent a lot of time over there working. We were working full time while we were there in the seasons and stuff. And yeah, it's just it's interesting to think about when people say retirement, they have like a void of time that kind of disappears. And so it's interesting to kind of think about it because what happens is when you set out to do a perfect example is, I set out from April. I chose to, or I didn't choose. I kind of got encouraged to because a mate of mine was doing it. But the main reason was the Sunshine Coast Marathon in August, on the 3rd of August. But we signed up back in April, and so from April to the 3rd of August, you have a very good idea of what you need to get done in terms of training and preparing for that event. And when you finish the event, no one really talks about. I mean, people kind of touch on it, but you have this enormous structure in your life, and when you wake up and you know what you need to do, especially from a training perspective and a programming perspective. But you don't really think about what happens, I mean, if you're a type A personality, yes, you do think about it a lot, but when you get to, you finish the race and, the dust kind of settles, especially when it's on a Sunday. And then, if you've taken a couple of days off work, you have, the long weekend and all those sorts of things. And, you go back to work on the Tuesday, for example, the dust kind of settles pretty quickly and you get back into your normal routine, but you kind of, you lose, I call it like a little bit of a void, kind of a time void appears. You were investing all this time into something, you had quite straightforward structure, and then all of a sudden, you finish the event, whether you hit your goals or not, you kind of, all of a sudden, this big void of time, this space of time kind of erupts. And even once you recover and stuff, you kind of wake up, a week later, and you're like, oh, what am I going to do? What am I going to do with myself? And just got prompted from me for one of the classic physique pro bodybuilders, Chris Bumstead, and he won the Olympia many years in a row. And he shared some thoughts on like being in retirement and, him being a little bit lost and all those sorts of things. And, everyone obviously goes through these things, but especially for myself and, being so type A and so driven and so just wanting to achieve all the time, you never sleep with it. It's just, yeah, it's just interesting to kind of think about it from my own perspective. And yeah, it is hard. And sometimes it's it's really interesting to kind of think about because you go, all of this time sort of appears and you kind of try and fill it with other things like, all sorts of different stuff. And then it's not until you sit down and go, okay, this is what I want to achieve in the next 6 months, or, you start planning on what's going on next, because it's not until you do that again that you then regain that structure, because it kind of all comes flying back. But I think the main reason for me that it's interesting for me to talk about is because the biggest one for me was training for an Ironman, which I did in Cairns in 2022, a couple of years ago now. And it just like slaps you in the face because you spend, 20 to 30, almost a full normal working week, a 40-hour week, just exercising, just training, just logging miles, just putting in the sessions. And they just like, all of a sudden when you finish the race, you kind of, again, the dust settles, a couple of days go by, a week goes by, you kind of, regain recovery, and you kind of wake up and you're like, oh my God, I've just got so much time on my hands, because you allocated so much time to training. And, I can tell that a lot of people in business would probably find this, it's all about the process and the journey and the, going through the motions of the daily struggle and trying to allocate and trying to be as productive as you can and trying to utilize all your free time, and all your free time is consumed in, either catching up on sleep, preparing meals, outside of work and sleeping and all those sorts of things. And yeah, all of a sudden this massive void of time just like reappears. And it's like, what do you do with it? So, it's all fun and games, but yeah, I just thought I'd kind of think through and talk through those things. But yeah, that is always been a bit of a struggle. And I know a lot of I'm by no means a professional or an amateur athlete in any way, shape or form. I just love the daily struggle and the grind of what's involved every day. But yeah, it's nice to know that even the professionals really struggle with this as well. And it does reiterate the fact that they're human as well. So it's nice to kind of reflect on it and kind of think about these things. So